Hello, welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival. I'm Lee Randall. A bit of housekeeping first. If you don't mind turning your phones to silent, if you want to tweet about how fabulous we are, I ask that you wait until the question and answer period later, when there will not only be a handheld mic roaming around, but the house lights will come up, and then you can actually see what you're tweeting anyway. They're fabulous. Come buy this book. I'm really, really pleased. This is my first event of the book festival, and I'm really glad to be starting on a high with, I'm going to try very hard, Helle Helle?
Helle Helle.
Helle Helle.
It's the same.
It's the same.
First and the second name. Helle Helle.
Helle Helle.
Lovely.
Who is one of Denmark's most read and best-loved authors. She published her first book in 1993, and since then she's won every prize they give out in Denmark, and a lot of popular acclaim as well as critical acclaim. I'm just going to list some prizes here. The Danish Critics' Prize, the Danish Academy's Beatrice Prize, the Golden Laurel, the P.O. Enquist Award, and the Lifetime Award of the Danish Arts Council. Her books have been published into 15 languages, but as far as we're concerned, she's a debut novelist, because this is her first book published in English, translated by Martin Aitken. The book is called This Should Be Written in the Present Tense, and the publisher, Harvel Secker, the editorial director, has said, "Helle is the master of the quiet existence, the consummate modern minimalist in whose books nothing and yet everything happens, mostly between the lines. Readers are never left unmoved." Now, I can vouch for that. And Helle will read us a little bit and set up the book, and then we'll talk amongst ourselves, and then I'll offer you all a chance to ask questions as well. Afterwards, we'll be taking Helle into the bookshop where she will sign books, should you be inspired to purchase one. So over to you, Helle. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Can you tell us a bit about, do you want to set up the premise of the book? Having told them it's a book in which maybe not that much happens, I don't want to say the plot, but there is a structure and
there is a structure.
A story.
A tiny plot. The book is about a young woman, Dorte she is called, and she rents a little house in a village about an hour from Copenhagen. And the house is around 27 meters from the rail tracks. So she, all the day long and the night too, she can hear and see all the trains passing by. And she is signed up at university in Copenhagen. So every day she jumps on a train and goes to Copenhagen, but she never attends, she never goes to university. She's drifting around in Copenhagen, going to cafeterias and spending all her money in charity shops and hanging out with a young poet, and there are a few young men there. Mm-hmm. And she is drifting a lot, and that's what it's about.
It's tremendous. Would you like to read us a little bit just to put us in the mood?
Yes, I'll read just a few lines from the beginning. I'll put on my glasses. Still not used to it. I wrote too much about that step, where I locked myself out in March, where I sat and stared in April, where my mum and dad stood in down jackets well into May, heads at an angle. The lilacs were in bloom. A bus swung away from the station. A hot smell of diesel, then lilacs again. My arms were bare, the air was warm and mild. "You forgot these," said my dad, and handed me the carrier bag. "We'll head up and wash the place down." "Your dad's let them out," said my mum. They turned and went back to the car, and my mum got in, a bucket and mop stuck up from the back seat. My dad raised his hand in a wave, his hair lifted in the wind. I went back into the kitchen. I left the door open behind me. I poured a glass of milk and heard them drive away this is how it might have been. That's the first page.
Where does a book start for you? Do you get an idea of a concept? Do you get does a character walk into your head and say, hello? Where does it start?
It's a bit like that. I almost have the first sentence and the last sentence.
That's my other question. Do you know how the book ends?
Yeah, I can't write the book if I don't have the end.
Really?
No, it doesn't make sense for me, because the beginning is so much, it's connected with the end. So I think really with this book I had the first sentence and the last sentence. Mm-hmm. And I imagined this girl, actually I thought she should be around 39. And when I started to write, she became younger and younger, because it didn't work that she was still studying and then really in Copenhagen and getting older. So she ended up being 20 years old. But it always begins with I'm thinking of a pair of eyes looking at the world. And I want to find out, who is this person? So I'm not, you said that there was a tiny plot here, and that's right, because I'm not really interested in plots in that way. I'm interested in the person, in a way of being in the world, not finding one's way. And that's also what the book is about.
She is a very passive character.
You think so? Yeah.
I think so, and perhaps I've misread it. We're going to talk about the work a reader has to do with this book later, and when I say work, that's not a bad word. It's a happy word with this book. But she struck me as quite passive. For example, she's very kind to some travelers who are stranded, and they end up having to spend the night in her flat, and then she ends up having to accidentally go into Copenhagen the next day because they think she's really going to classes, etc. And it does seem that things sort of, and she has a relationship when she's a bit younger, but she seems to fall into. What I was wondering is, but again, this is all predicated on her being passive. Was it difficult to write about a passive person? Because in many books, the whole point is that the main character is out thrusting their way around the universe.
Yeah. No, it was not, because I always seem to write about, you can say passive, but in a way it's my main characters, also Dorte here, are easily carried away by circumstances, you might say, or like dragged along by an event. And that, I think that's why it's very good for me to write a book with a main character being around 20, because that's an age that I connect a lot with, that feeling that sometimes you just do something. I mean, she gets on a train just because the conductor waves his arm and it's not the right train. So she jumps out and she tears her new jeans apart. And yeah, I tried it myself once when I was 20. and in a way, that's just what it's like with her. But what I wanted to say is that even in some of my other novels, when people are not 20 but 40 or 50 or 30, it gives a lot. It's very good for me to write about people that don't have, that don't know what to choose, that can't find their way, that don't do all the things that you from the outside wish they would do. I could never write a novel about somebody getting an education, getting the right job and earning a lot of money and having a name. Or it gives me a lot of expressive energy to write about people that don't make the right decisions. So I don't see her as passive, I think. I see her as a person that she's observing the world and she's wondering, and sometimes she does what Yeah, does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
It's very difficult for me to explain this even in Danish, so I hope it's okay. It's not that easy in English.
I was saying earlier, we all accidentally think we know Danish because we watch so much television, but in fact we don't. But she does. She gets swept along in all sorts of strange ways. I'm very, very curious about the character of her aunt, who has the same name. So this will be, I'll probably refer to the older and the younger to separate them. She is much closer to her aunt than she is to her parents, at least in the context of this book. And I wondered why you did that, for a start.
Well, from the beginning, I had a plan with the book, and luckily the plan didn't work out. It's always like that when you start writing, something happens because it's language, and it's a material that you can't force it. So, but the plan was that I wanted to write a book where Dorte here was kind of struggling to get free of an what can you say, heritage lack of enthusiasm. Does that make sense? I thought about her parents as two very quiet persons, and I thought that all her childhood they would have been sitting around the table, and her parents would say, "That's fine, okay," like that. And I wanted the book to be about Dorte moving away from that way of being in the world without much enthusiasm. So I thought the parents should have a big role here, and it ended up that they only have one line each on the first page, which is the page I read here. Well, her dad says, we are going, I'll see what he says here in English. He says, "You forgot these." That's her jeans that has been repaired. "We'll head up and wash the place down." And her mum says, "Your dad's let them out." That's the jeans, because she has gained some weight. And in a way, they are not in the book after that first page, and then still I think they are there all the time, even though there is not much about them. And her auntie there is completely different from the parents, because she's very lively and very enthusiastic and very warm and drifting from place to place and from man to man, just like the young daughters. So they are kind of reflecting.
That's what I felt, that they
mirrored
one another.
Yeah.
But that's worrying, because the aunt has a few, I don't want to spoil anything, the aunt has some problems in life.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
And she is also a part of that. I mean, she's a part of what Dorte comes from, like her parents. They're just one group. And I guess the book is also about leaving the environment, can you say that you come from, the place and the people there that you come from, changing your environment without feeling that you are betraying what you come from. Yeah.
Well, she almost, not to create an image that isn't correct for the book, but she lives at a station, and she is almost at a way station between being a child and being an adult.
Oh, so you find the station symbolic?
I might.
It's not.
I might.
I always have many stations and trains and boats in my books.
Unfortunately, I come from this place of ignorance. This is the only book of yours I have to work with, so I haven't read your back.
No, that's fine.
I'm hoping one day they will translate the rest of them into English.
You're not the first one that said that. This station, in a way, is a picture of a daughter's life. But I just chose this place because it's good for me to write from small places out in nothing. where people can where people get stuck. Just like the couple you mentioned here before that.
Who actually do get stuck.
They get stuck because the last train, has gone, just left. And so they sleep in Dorte's house. And that's why it's very good to write from small places, because there are not so many buses and trains. And people can get stuck. And also this book takes place in the 80s, because I can't get cell phones into my books, because they're so disturbing. They take away the focus, and people can all the time, disappear from where they really are, and they don't get in contact and everything. No, it's much better without them. So that's why the book is in the 80s.
But one of your reviewers said that your characters seem to have fallen through time, and I felt that although the book is, for all intents and purposes, contemporary, not immediately contemporary, but it's not historic, that it still could be any time. And I wondered if your point was it doesn't matter specifically what year it is, we're trying to talk about the human experience, and the human experience is fundamentally, the emotional experience has a continuity to it, regardless of whether it's 85, 95, 1895.
True.
Have I put more symbols on that?
No, you haven't. And it makes me think of the title, because after my mom read the book, she phoned me and said, about the title, could it be that it's because what goes on there could go on and on? I mean, this should be written in the present tense. And, I thought that was a very good way of seeing it, because that is why the title is like that. Yeah. That's one of the reasons. Maybe I didn't answer your question at all.
That's all right. It doesn't have to be.
I was thinking about the present tense here.
Well, even on the first page, the bit that you've shared, you say, I'm telling you this story, gets to the bottom of the page, that might not have exactly happened. Yeah. That should have happened. So in a small way, she's not the most reliable narrator. What she's presenting are the possibilities.
True.
This might have happened, this might not have happened. Now, one thing you told me, we traded some emails, one thing you told me was that even the smallest, a single word can change an entire book.
Yeah.
And I want you to explain why.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just like that for me, I think. Of course, it has to be a very important word then, if you change it, and it changes the whole book. But I work in, after knowing the first sentence and the last sentence, I actually just, every day I get up in the morning and start writing when I'm writing. And for a long time it doesn't work. I might spend a year writing the first 20 pages or so, because everything has to be there on the first 20 pages. And what I do is I end up thinking just 2 good sentences today, or just 1 or 3. I think in sentences. So I'm very close to every word and every sign here. And it doesn't make sense for me to take anything, to write anything that doesn't have meaning. I want every word to have a meaning. Yeah, and then one day there are enough sentences and there is a novel. But when you work with language like that, of course, just a wrong word can change everything. And it might not be a big word. It can be a preposition or something.
But could it actually take the story into a new direction? Or would you then delete that word because that's not the direction you wish to go?
It maybe, especially in the, what is that called? Repliques? What is that called? The lines.
The dialogue.
Yes, in the dialogue.
Speaking.
The speaking. Yes, in the speaking it's very important, because if a person says, I don't want that, instead of I might, then everything is changed. So and it could be even less than that. It could be I don't want that, instead of I don't think I want that. It's so small things that changes everything.
Yeah. Given the importance of every word, every comma, every full stop,
Yeah.
How is the experience of being translated for you? Because the words are very different, and the translator may try to put in or take out, and because of all your languages, I don't know how many other languages you speak, but you do speak beautiful English. Did you work with the translator, and how is that whole experience?
Yeah. I find it so amazing that you can translate books, really. It's fantastic. Because language is so much more than information. It's small meanings all the time, and there is a lot of meaning that can't be translated. So translators really make the literary world spin around in a way, because they have to rewrite the book. I know that. Well, I always get a list of questions from my translators, and I can see on that list that they are very good translators because of the questions. Because I don't understand every language. I did understand the English, but still my English is not good enough. I wouldn't know if everything was all right. But
do you remember any of is it Martin's questions for you?
His questions? Oh yes. No, I don't know if I remember. But the thing is that, for instance, the end of chapter 2, the young daughter is with her auntie, the older daughter. They are looking at this house that Dorte is going to rent. They're having a look there. The landlady shows them around, and it ends with one line. The auntie says to Dorte, "Take care, love. I'm expecting a pig," and that's how the chapter ends. And the reason why she says that is that she has a sandwich shop. So sometimes she's expecting a pig because she uses it for pulled pork or something. But this, in Danish, it was different. And that is very difficult to explain. But in a way, it gives even more sense in English here. That he translated it, "I'm expecting a pig," because that could mean different things. And in Danish, it meant some other things. No, I think I don't know if that makes sense.
That's fascinating, because I immediately thought, yes, it's for her shop.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's just because I know that she has so many men. I thought it was so funny.
Now I've got to reread the book. And I was you said something really fascinating that fascinated me from a cultural perspective earlier. You were talking about the convention where in Denmark, if somebody asks, "How are you?" the answer is not what one might expect. And I wondered if you could share that story.
I'll
because
try.
I think it's very culturally fascinating, and we need to understand the culture, really.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's culture. I guess it is. Yes, it is. I grew up in the south of Denmark on an island, very close to all the ferries to Germany. And after I moved to Copenhagen when I was 18 to study at university, literature, for some years, actually 5 years or so, I never really went there. But I realized when I moved to Copenhagen that every time I phoned my parents, they were divorced and lived in separate different places there in this island where I grew up. And when I asked them, "How are you? How are you, Mom?" or "How are you, Dad?" They would always give me an answer that described what they were doing. Like, I would say, "How are you, Mom?" And I really wanted an answer, not just "I'm fine." And she would say, "I'm waiting for my sister." Or my dad could say, when I asked, "How are you, Dad?" "We're going to have a new roof," or something, rooftop. So, and I told that to some of the friends I got in Copenhagen, and they all said that it was a very poor way of talking, that nobody was able to say what they felt, to tell if they felt good or bad, but just talking about what they did all the time. But I felt that it sort of set me free.
How so?
It's a very good way of saying how you are, what you're doing. And that's how I write. I don't write what they feel or think.
Yes.
I write what they do and what they say, because that's what it's all about.
Yes.
And that is how we meet each other all the time. I mean, it's difficult enough to tell how you are. I can't really.
Yeah.
So, but I move around, and so do you.
Well,
and maybe
yeah.
I get some thoughts about how you are just by looking at you.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm really freaked out.
And that's something that is very inspiring to.
Well, for a writer,
to be here, yes, being in a room like this with strangers that I can't see you because of the lights so clearly, but watching people and listening and all the small moves, and it's like being on a train and you see somebody, you think that you are in your own thoughts, and then you realize that you spent 8 minutes thinking about if they are sisters, and are they having a problem? Are they going to visit their mum, or why did they bring their lunch here? Are they going to have... And you're thinking about them all the time, and you don't know anything. And if you got their story, maybe it wasn't that interesting, because you don't get the story, because you only see something and get a bit of the story, and you can write the rest of it yourself. It grows. And that's my method, you can say.
well, as I was saying, for a short, spare book, it's incredibly dense. And by dense, I mean I didn't have to, I wanted to read it incredibly slowly and take my time with it, because here's the work part. I really wanted to think about what was, there is that classic phrase, reading between the lines, but I was trying to peek behind the paragraphs. What's, for example, and I'm not the first person to point this out, I think I know every single thing she ate during the course of this book, but she has an abortion, and that's done in a sentence. You don't dwell on it, you don't linger in it. She ends one relationship and begins another, and again, it's over here. But I know what was in the sandwich she fixed after the thing. And I found that an incredibly interesting choice on your part. Put this in, take this out. Put this in, take this out. And I just wondered if you could talk a bit more about that. How do you decide?
Yeah.
Or is that too difficult to...
No, it's not. A part of it is a decision, and a big part of it is I have to feel what this book it's a feeling. I can feel how I should write this. And people have said to me in Denmark too that it's so strange that Dorte is having an abortion, and I write 3 lines about it, and then there is a whole chapter about buying Danish pastry in a baker shop. But that feels quite right for me, because I guess it works better when you don't use many words for the important stuff. And then, does that make sense?
That's fascinating.
It really does. It's much harder that way, if you don't describe it too much. So maybe it's just because I'm not very good at describing feelings too. I don't know. But of course, if a young girl, I mean, she's the main character, and it's written in first person, so she tells the story. And when she tells just a few lines about, she talks very little about an abortion, and then she talks so much about buying a pastry. That says a lot about things, I guess.
Yeah, about her attitude.
It is easier to talk a lot about things that doesn't mean that much, maybe. I don't know.
Well, she's telling us what she's doing instead of how she is.
Yeah, Maybe. Yeah.
But with so much, as a reader, I didn't mind being asked to do some work, to engage with the book. But there's always the risk then that I will interpret the book and your meanings this way, and you actually meant.
Yeah, true. That's right.
Does that trouble you, or are you happy to? Oh,
it troubles me because I want the reader to read it in one special way. But of course, you can do whatever you want. But I think you're right that if you can read my book and you could say, well, nothing really happens. I just read it. What was there? It was nothing. But if you have to read slow, I think.
Yeah,
I've heard that before because things are there, but.
Yeah, I don't think nothing happens. What I think is all of life happens.
Okay, that's nice.
There's not a particular, it's not like, if you read an adventure book, Three Musketeers, there's a plot and there's a thing and an adventure. That's not what this is. This is all of life is happening and we're watching it for a short amount of time. So when I say nothing happens, what I mean is nothing monumental happens. The kinds of things some other authors put into books.
Yeah, but it's quite strange in a way, because you could say that a lot of stuff really happens here in this book. I mean, there is a nervous breakdown. That's not Dorte, and there is a young girl lying to her family, moving from one boyfriend to another.
There's an affair.
There's an affair. There is a lot of stuff. Betraying, loss, longing, but all the time people say, well, nothing really happens. But I guess it has got something to do with how it's written. That must be it. And the way that I write it, I seem to move away from all the big dramas. I don't want to describe them. I just move away from them and describe the pastry and a glass of water instead. And that glass of water means something because it's connected to the catastrophe over here.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And it means something because it got to stay in your book and the other thing didn't.
Yeah. That's a good way of seeing it.
It was chosen to be there, so we must look at it.
Yeah, you could say so.
Well, see, I personally love books about ordinary people because I'm always trying to figure out how to do life. And I get examples in books such as yours about, well, this is one way to do or not do life. So I quite enjoy that.
But I never felt that my book is about ordinary life. I know that it is, but sometimes I look at my bookshelf and I can't find a book that is not about ordinary life. Maybe it's just the books that I read, I don't know, but the best books are always about something that you recognize, I feel, something that you know from your own life, which is quite, which you can recognize.
Yeah. And have you always been a massive reader? I mean, were you the little girl with the head stuck in the book?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I was. I read a lot.
And what is available in Denmark? I sound like a real ignoramus now, but what kinds of literature do you get? Lots of books in translation? Because we were also talking about the fact that such a small percentage of, I mean, obviously this festival this year is focusing a lot on books in translation, but normally we don't get that
You
much.
don't have to translate that much.
The percentage of what we see isn't really...
It's like 3% or something, I heard. And it's a lot more for us. So we are we depend on, we need translators.
And
both
is there
ways.
a particular nation that feeds into the Danish bookshelf one more than another? Or is it the Russians or the Germans or?
Oh, not the Russians, I think. Some of them. English writers and American writers, and actually a lot of Norwegian and Swedish writers, because we translate from Norwegian and Swedish to Danish too, which is a bit strange because we do quite understand each other, but not totally. So Norwegian literature is quite big in Denmark. Names like Per Pettersson and Roy Jacobsen, and of course all the crime books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read those.
No.
I've just
You
watched
haven't.
it on the television.
Yeah. Yes, I have too.
And I mean, the one Scandinavian writer that obviously a lot of us grew up with, I'm not going to pronounce, Tove Jansson, with the Moomins.
Oh yes, she's from Finland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a childhood staple over here.
Yes, it is in Denmark too.
It is. So what's
I was thinking about. You said that you watched The Crime and
Yes.
Borgen and that.
Well, we as a nation devoured it.
When it comes to translation, I heard somebody told me that was not an English translator, because you have to, of course, all the texts there are translated as it's texted, so those series are translated as well. And I think it was a Dutch translator that told me that it was much better in Dutch, The Crime and Borgen, because they talk so much. The lines are not that good in Danish, but the translators did a lot of good job here. So when you read the lines, it's so precise and everything's just as it should be. And they talk too much in Danish.
That's brilliant. Well, we have no way of knowing.
Now you see, it's always better to cut down a bit.
Yeah. So would you say that your favorite writers are the ones who write in very spare prose?
No, I wouldn't say. I have had a Virginia Woolf summer. And I wouldn't say that she has a spare language, really. She is one of my favorites, of course.
Is she? What have you been reading this summer?
It's because I went to Brighton with my daughter for summer holiday, and we went and saw Virginia Woolf's house, so I started to read her books again. I read The Waves, which is the big experimental book, and I reread To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway. And so no, I don't, but of course I like Hemingway, and I like a lot of different writers that are both use many words and less words.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it doesn't depend on, it's how you use the words, of course. It's not how many or how few, it's how they're used.
And what if you'd written the book in the present tense?
Yeah, it is written in the past tense. Otherwise, I took the title from Samuel Beckett, actually, because I was reading his novel Molloy, and that book all the times comments on the text while it is written, sort of. And then on page 23 it said, all this should be written in the past tense. And I thought, I'll take that and use it for my book. And that's why.
Didn't you tell me you said your mother had trouble with the...
No, she didn't have trouble. She was explaining me why the title was so good. But maybe I didn't explain what she said well enough. No,
I'm just obviously having a brain drain.
No, I'm not sure. I know my
Could you read us a couple of lines in Danish?
In Danish,
would you
yes.
mind? I think that would be fascinating to hear the different cadences.
Okay. Min far fik den ternede kuffert i svendegave. En gang havde den været i Hobro. Jeg lånte den, da jeg flyttede hjemmefra anden gang. Jeg skulle i huset på Vestsjælland. Jeg skulle passe 2 børn og en golden retriever. Golden retriever.
And I got indgang. That means entrance, right?
Yeah.
I know Danish suddenly.
True.
More than just talk.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I think it's probably a good time to turn the lights on and get the mic roving. The mic's in the back now, so what we should do is raise your hands, because I know you all have questions, and we'll just get through as many as possible. Now, there's somebody right up front, but just wait till you have the microphone, because then everyone will hear the question.
Okay, can you hear me okay? I'm just wondering, out of all the books you've published so far in Denmark, how did you decide that this would be your first in English? Or was it a publisher decision or your decision?
It was not my decision. It just happened. Maybe because that book got the Golden Laurel in Denmark, and it came out in some different countries, and then I was lucky. And that was it. Yeah. I don't really have anything to do with those kind of decisions, really. Maybe, sometimes if in Germany they ask me, what do you think we should publish now? Because they started from my back catalogs, sort of, and then moved forward. So that's so wonderful that when you write books, you don't even think that they are going to have another life in another country. And then I can go here and talk about a book that came out in 2011 in Denmark, and I have a new book in Denmark now, which I'm talking about all the time. So I know this book much better now. Maybe I'm not better talking about it, but I know it better. And that's a good thing when you travel around that. Yeah. It feels easier to talk about it. The worst question is always, what is your new book about? I never have an answer until after 2-3 years. I don't know.
That's fascinating. There's a lady over here, which is going to be difficult with you there.
Since you're quite a small country, the Danish book market must itself be quite small. Is it possible to survive as a writer in Denmark without translations into other languages?
Well, it's not easy. But actually, I have been living on it for a while now. Then you have to do some other stuff too. I do a lot of, we called it events, when you go and have a reading on a school, for instance. I've written short stories too, so I have been traveling around to Danish schools for many years, talking about my short stories that they use in the Danish lessons, trying to explain how they shouldn't read them and understand them, and that there are no symbols and like that. So, and that I earned money that way, but it's not easy, but I'm okay.
More questions?
We do have many good support stuff. What do you say? Some kind of art support that you can apply for. And we have to have that. That is a very good thing in Denmark. You said here from the beginning that I got the Lifetime Award from the Danish Arts Council, and that's a part of it. I don't really get any money these days because I earn my own money, but it is a kind of insurance. In bad years, I will get some money so that I can survive as a writer. So of course it's a great honor, but also it's nice to think about that. I mean, there are bad times sometimes, so we have to support our literature in Denmark, to support the language, simply.
There was a question in front. Just hang on.
My question was, sorry, first time with a microphone. My question was, do you read in other languages? And if you do, as a writer, how do you find that affects your writing or how you think about writing?
If I read in other languages? I don't read much in other languages, so it doesn't affect my own writing. No, I read some English books and some Norwegian and Swedish books, and that's all.
Is that intentional for your writing or not?
What does that mean? If I
because how to explain it?
No, I do understand it, but I just want to be sure what you mean.
Okay, I'll give an example. Yeah. When I lived in France for a while, for many years, and when I first started reading in French, of course I didn't understand the connotations of individual words.
No.
You know, what people thought of when they saw this word, all the associations people had. And so it really changed the way I read and thought about it, because I started thinking about, well, what is the author paying attention to in this scene? What objects? What are the characters looking at? What are they saying? And so it really changed my reading and how I thought about it.
Yeah. No, I haven't had that experience, but I know that, of course, staying in another country for a while has an effect on your writing. But one should be aware, because just reading does something. Just reading books does something to your language. I have to take care sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't read too much Virginia Woolf when I sit down to write, or I just find myself trying to do what she did. So that can be dangerous. You have to mix your reading in a way. I have to read different stuff when I write.
Do you ever write books that require research? Or do you always write books, where you have to read
No,
up about history?
I don't. I'm not a research writer. It doesn't interest me. I have to do a little research every now and then, but I need to know things. I need to have a kind of body experience with everything to write about it, really. So it's not books about, this book is not about me, but I know some of it is. But I'm not Dorte. My auntie doesn't have a sandwich shop. And my parents are divorced and things like that. I never rented a little house in that village, but I live very close to that village. And so I have to know things. I have to know the places. I have to know the people. I have to know the feelings. But it doesn't give anything to me to research, really.
Okay. There's a question way back there.
Hi. You say that you write about things that are not emotional and not really dramatic, but you also say that you like the reader to read your books in a certain way. So I'm wondering, when you write about the pastries or the glass of water, whether you actually write about something else completely. Whether that, for you personally, has an emotional story or an emotional impact that you really would like us to imbue that text with, or is it just about the glass of water? So are you a symbolist, or are you just a observationalist, if you like?
The last thing.
Okay.
It depends. It's not just a glass of water. It's if I bring this glass of water in one chapter, it's because the person that takes this water has a thought with it. It sounds so boring.
No.
But it is like it's all the small nuances, it's all the small moves. It doesn't make sense to write about a glass of water if it's just a glass of water. But if I'm afraid to drop it, or if I'm shaking so much that I can't drink, like you told me you once did, it suddenly means something, that glass of water. I think that I don't want to waste the reader's time, really. I want there should be some calories in the text, and if that makes sense. And my way of I think I write like that because I want the small everything to mean something. I mean, I don't want nothing to be in the books. It should mean something. I'm talking rubbish now. I'm sorry. My vocabularium is so very small. It is in Danish too, though it is a bit bigger.
More questions?
May I ask another?
Oh, sorry.
I know I'm just being very pedantic.
Second half of your question.
No, but if anybody else wants, I'm just being very pedantic. But
You're welcome.
When you say that glass of water has some meaning, is that the meaning is the glass of water, or are you thinking that we, the reader, has a specific understanding of that meaning, or is it just the glass of water?
Okay.
I know I'm being very pedantic. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe the character in the book connects different things with that glass of water. Really, a glass of water is a bad example. It's better with a shoe, this shoe. She connects something with that shoe. She wants to look in a special way. She's thinking about what other people think about her if she wears this shoe, which has a pointed toe. She's thinking about if she moves her leg, what people would think that means something special, or is she uncomfortable moving her shoe, or in a way there is a lot of reflection. There can be a lot of reflection in looking at your shoe and moving your leg like that. Just that little move. So that's what I mean. I'm not answering your question, I know. Yeah.
More questions? Oh, they've gone all shy on us. I was thinking when you were talking earlier that if you know somebody incredibly well, for example, if I phoned my mother and said, "How are you?" and she said, "I'm waiting for your grandmother to come," that would be a story. I would know hundreds of things about how exactly she was feeling.
It's like that. You don't have to use many words because you know your mom, so you know what she feels like when she's waiting for your grandma to come.
No.
And that's it. That's one of the ways it can be that you know, but yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Are you sure none of you have any more questions? Oh, there we go. Well done. Hang on, we'll just get you the mic.
I'm a translator.
Mm-hmm.
And I translate from Norwegian, and I know that they use this a lot where they use very physical descriptions to describe what's going on. Per Pettersson talks about it, amongst other things. And one of the things that happens is that in Norwegian they use a lot of adverbs and verbs, whereas in English we tend to use adjectives and nouns much more. So that when you're translating, you often have to change.
Yes.
Do you find that happens in the translation in the English? Has there been those transformations, or has he stuck very much to adverbs and verbs?
I think that he hasn't transformed it that way. He hasn't been talking about that, the translator Martin Aitken. He talked a lot about that. He said we have to change a lot of the commas and do full stops instead. Because I have a special way of using commas in Danish and it doesn't work in English, which is a pity, because the commas are all the music in the language. It's so musical, really, and you can. It's so nice how you can put some lines close to each other and giving them equal weight, sort of.
So it gives them the rhythm.
No, it's not just the rhythm. It's also that you are not explaining. You're just putting them. I'll give you an example. It's like, I think he kept the comma here. It's Dorte. She's spending some time with a young man, Per Finland, he's called, and his parents. I'll just read a little bit here. He had a water bed. It pitched and sloshed. His parents pottered about in the garden below. And here is the comma now. They couldn't keep the weeds under control. They were both of them teachers. In Danish, that is quite funny. Maybe it's not in English. In Danish, it says, they couldn't keep the weeds under control. They were both Danish teachers. And he took out the Danish here. But if I had written, they couldn't keep the weeds under control because they were both teachers, that's something different. And the comma here makes it very good for me because it's more, I like to find those, it doesn't work all the time, but I like this one because it seemed to be quite an elegant way of saying it when I wrote it, if that makes sense. You could also turn it around. They were both teachers, so they couldn't keep the weeds under control. That's not as funny. It's the other way around on a comma. And that's what I do when I write. I work with this stuff like that. Yeah.
It's called style.
It's called style. Yes.
It's called style. It's
very
called style,
elegant. And you have to, yes. And all the time you work hard to find your style, and then the rest of life trying to escape from it, not to be writing the same book again and again, which is the problem, because now I can't use a comma like that again.
If there's not any last questions, then what I'm going to say now is this book is available for sale in the bookshop. Oh wait, we do have a last question. One more last question.
It's the shoe. I'm sorry.
What's the most important thing for you about writing?
That was a little question here to end.
Yeah. As we go into overtime.
The most important thing. There are so many important things here. For me, it has to do with, for instance, forgetting myself while I'm writing. What is that called? Self, when you forget yourself. When you forget your life, you forget everything, you just
abandon the real world.
Yeah, and that way of, you asked me here earlier what it was like to read when I was a child. And I said to you that I remember that I, as a child, when I read a book, when I really began reading, I found out that I was completely away from this world, and at the same time, even more alive than I was normally. And that is, maybe that's why I write, because books can do that. And I can have that feeling when I write them, but what is more important is that what literature is when it is written, that at the same time you can be completely away from this place and be so aware of this place too.
It's transporting. It transports you somewhere.
Yeah, you can say that.
Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm fascinated, and I could talk to you for another hour, but we don't have it.
No.
Helle will be signing books once I get her over to the bookshop, if you just let us have a head start. But first, can we please thank her?